All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Back to order. It is 1:02. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Back there, Jim. Good glory. Why don't you bring me home court?
Okay, our first item for discussion, we've already done. That was the presentation that we saw on Homeland Security. The next will be CB zoning. Discuss CB zoning district changes. Sarah?
We have some maps. Oh, perfect. So I created some maps because we'd had a discussion about the CB zoning district, and I put together language based on the conversation that happened at the town council meeting. And then when we took it to the LPA had a lot of concerns and people came in and spoke. I thought that it would be really good for everyone to see where these lots actually are. So I created a map, or someone on my staff helped create a map. It's a little bit hard to see up there, but the darker pink, the solid pink, and the solid orange are the CB zone districts or CB zone properties on the northern part of the island. And then the next page, can you scroll to the next page, Jacob? Those very few lots that are pink and orange are the,
Sarah?
yes.
Could you just go up 1,000 feet before we get granular here, in case
Oh.
folks are watching? Talk about what a CB zoning district is, and also, is this the same as a land use map? Could you just kind of help people set the table?
Okay. So Commercial Boulevard is a zoning district that we've had some issues with for a number of years. This code was changed several years ago. Currently, the way it is written, you are allowed to have a use that was previously on the lot, but you can't have additional uses. So if you had a restaurant, it has sort of a scale. Restaurant is the highest intensity use. Retail is the second highest use, and office is the lowest level use. So if you had a restaurant and you went back to an office, previously the code wouldn't allow you to ever go above anything, become more intense. So you couldn't ever be retail, you could never be restaurant again. We changed it a few years ago so that if you previously had a restaurant and then you became an office and you could prove that you had a restaurant before, you could go back to a restaurant. However, that's been pretty difficult to implement because we don't always know what were on those lots. And a lot of times it's a new owner and they may not know what was there either. The records aren't great, so it's a little bit difficult for staff to know what was previously there. Especially in the plazas where there are multiple businesses in them. So when we had spoken about this before, the council had concerns regarding people being able to use these parcels, for a commercial use that was reasonable, because they were sort of stuck with things that had been there before and they may want to change it. So I put together several changes to the zoning ordinance. There was concern that it was too far, that people would be allowed to do too many things. So I've sort of pulled it back a little bit. If you want to take a look at the table that's in your packet. So Exhibit B, that is the zoning table with the L's and the O's. So previously, you weren't.
Can you put that up on the screen?
I don't think he had it.
It's in the packet, but
Okay,
I
so
don't
he
know if
might
he
be.
can.
I sent him the maps so he can put those on the screen.
Oh,
But
yeah,
I
it's in the
didn't.
packet.
Okay. So the idea is that CB would be open to these other uses, but with limitations. So you would be able to have a restaurant, but essentially the limitations would be on the outdoor entertainment, so the noise aspect, and outdoor dining. Again, the noise aspect that everybody seems to have some concerns with. But I thought it was really important to include these maps because it shows, so the pink is commercially, properties being used commercially. So for an office, retail, or restaurant. And then the orange lots are the ones that have been a residential use. Okay, so this is the zoning table. And as you see down at the bottom, the CB with all the X's through it, that line. It had gone from limited for lodging, office, retail to open for those. So that would allow most of the uses, and the limitations really are the floor area ratio, because the floor area ratio is still lower than downtown. Because I know there were concerns that, oh, we're turning this into the downtown, but we're not. The floor area ratio within that area is 1. So we're looking at a much smaller floor area ratio. It still has the setbacks. It still has the height limits. So we're not talking about hugely intense developments because they're just not going to be able to get those with the setbacks, the FAR, the height limitations. But it would allow them to have additional uses with limitations so that they wouldn't be as impactful to the adjacent properties. So that was the intent with doing these changes. And I wanted to get your feedback before I took it to LPA to find out if you were comfortable with it. And I wanted to create the map because there were concerns at the hearing that these uses were going to be encroaching into neighborhoods. And Jacob, can you pull up the map again?
So if it was a bank, say before, and now maybe they want to do a coffee and bagel shop, this would allow them to be able to use that use, whereas before they couldn't have done that.
Yes, that's correct.
So on page 42 that under it says uses, it says continuation of the commercial uses that were previously allowed on the site prior to the permit request, evidence of the permit, blah, blah, blah. But that's not saying that you can't do anything that wasn't previously there, right? That's just saying that you can do something that you could show was there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yes, or you can have the uses that are allowed by the table 34-2.
Okay.
But you having the additional regulations limiting the outdoor dining. But if you already had outdoor dining, if you already had outdoor entertainment, you can continue to have those uses. Okay. It's just if you're adding a new use and you want to have that, there are limitations to ensure that the adjacent property owners are less affected.
But could they go for any kind of special exception to have those things?
They could go through a CPD to have those things.
Okay.
The special exception, I don't know would allow them that necessarily.
Could they go through a development agreement?
They could go through because a development agreement is essentially the CPD process. Right. So yeah. So there would be ways for them to pursue it, but as a by right zoning use, they would be limited. But they can have more uses.
So Sarah, originally we were trying to address a section of the island on the south end, and it sounds like we're doing that, but I just want to be clear. So I got 2 questions. The property, it used to be an old medical center. It's vacant. It's been vacant for years. It's on Estero. It's close to Church of the Ascension as you go by Church of the Ascension headed south. And again, this remains vacant for years. A few years ago, somebody wanted to open a kind of a tea shop there and couldn't for the reasons we just talked about. So under this new proposal, could somebody buy that property and open a restaurant there as long as the restaurant remained indoors?
Yes.
And they can't currently.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And then, so the same would hold true further south, where you had the old dentist office, chiropractor, and spa there, across from Santini Plaza on Estero Boulevard.
I don't know that those are zoned CB.
What would they be
I
zoned?
pulled,
That's what I'm trying to pull up.
Yeah, I got the maps from, I got the addresses from the property appraiser and the GIS team, and then I cross-checked it by what we had in our records. So I don't know that we have that.
Those are the kind of properties that are vacant and idle. And those would be the ones that we'd want to impact positively, that
Mhm.
don't have any adverse impact on the neighborhoods. In fact, that particular location is across the street from Estero, so there is no other neighbor that could, the next, they're near the 7-Eleven and I,
Well, there is a condo behind there.
behind there, that's right. But again, to have activity for the condos is generally welcomed, particularly if it's someplace to eat, given the current situation there. So, and I've had a couple people express interest in a restaurant there, but of course they're concerned about that, indoor restaurant. There's lots of parking across the street in Santini Plaza as well, if they wanted to have a partnership. I'm trying to figure out ways to have some life in some of these dead areas, these dead spots. That was a great complex before, having a dentist, a chiropractor, and a haircut slash spa place there. That was dynamite. But to get that to come back it'd be great. But if it doesn't, I want to make sure that there's other options so that building just doesn't sit vacant.
It appears that that's zoned RM,
And what does RM mean?
residential multifamily.
Why would that be zoned RM? Just out of curiosity. I know you don't have a history, but it seems like an odd location to be zoned RM, right?
It was probably owned by a condominium developer at the time, and they never rezoned it. But I couldn't speak to exactly why.
Can we impact those types of properties on that section?
If
of
they
Estero?
if they choose to rezone.
We can't do that through this changing. They
No.
would have to come in and rezone.
Yeah, and that's why I created the map, because I think there are a lot of questions about what actually is zone CB. There's a total of 35 properties, only 35 properties on the island that are zone CB. So it's a very minimal change. It impacts the people who own those properties, but it doesn't affect a lot of properties. And that's also why I didn't want to do an overlay, because there are so few. I think that it would impact the owners very differently. And I don't know that that would be a good idea with just so few properties in that zoning district.
And I don't see Jason here, but does this address the Paula Kiker
Yes,
issue?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
Very good. All right. Sounds good.
So the zoning map we have on our website shows that property that he's talking about is in the CB zoning district.
yeah, I'm not sure if it is.
If the
It's-
address map doesn't go down.
I got off the top of my head. I can't.
Well, you can see right where it's at on the map. It's on the corner of, I gotta zoom in.
It's right next to 7-Eleven, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, next
No, it's
to-
down, the one he's talking about is right next to Lahaina Realty, right?
Well, no,
No,
that's,
no,
no.
that's one of the two. The other one
Oh,
is
the
next
other
to
one.
7-Eleven.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not
Just
sure which
south
one
of
you're
7-Eleven.
talking about. Do you know the
Across from
address?
Santini.
Across from Santini, just
Yeah,
south. of
I don't think
7-Eleven.
your map goes that far.
Uh,
At least the
Not
one that
these-
you have
not this one, no.
in the packet.
So there's Santini. This is Santini here. So 7-Eleven is right here.
Yep.
And this is, well, that's,
Could be this.
well, the CPD is, that is CBS.
I wonder what this is.
Is that the service station?
This is that, where Dr. Bennett was in.
That's
Yes.
what this is
Yeah,
what I'm
the
talking about.
the
Yeah.
service station. I
That's,
think.
Why is that pink?
it's CO.
Yeah, I see CO there. CO is commercial office. So we're not impacting commercial office.
So they would have to go through rezoning to be able to Commercial Boulevard.
Yes, if that's what they wanted.
So if somebody wanted to open a restaurant there, they could come before the LP and the council and just make a petition. That wouldn't be a violation of the comp plan. That would just be a petition to change it, to change the use, correct?
I would need to evaluate, and so it would be a zoning district, so it wouldn't be a use change.
And it is,
Well, but by
Right,
doing
look
the
at that.
zoning district change, you would essentially get the Commercial Boulevard uses.
Yes.
But the other one I thought you were talking about,
that was as well.
that's in a Commercial Boulevard,
Okay, very good, very good.
which is down by Wapala.
Yep. Well, regardless, I think this is a good step forward, Sarah.
Okay. Are you comfortable with this language? Does it make sense? Do you think that it's the appropriate limitations?
Yeah, refresh my memory, what were some of the pushback from the LPA? I know, I don't remember all.
There was a concern that it was going to be impacting neighborhoods.
Well,
Um,
I can tell you the pushback because I watched it. And I was responsible for some of it. We had a constituent who we all know who was interested in having right across from Church of the Ascension. There are a couple areas back there that looked like they were destroyed by the storm, and it looked like they were just sitting there fallow. And there was a thought that maybe that area could be rezoned so we could have some restaurants on the ocean right there. And since that time, I've been informed that the folks who own that land are interested in rebuilding their homes and property. So that has sort of become a moot point. So, and I've talked to Anita about that. So that was just really more of a trial balloon than anything else. But so that's off the table. And I think that's where we heard a little bit of pushback. But
Yeah.
I think the other issue was less controversial. The solution you have just posited, I think, was less controversial.
Yeah. My understanding was that there were a lot of questions about where these properties were, who would be impacted, and then just adding that extra layer of protection for the neighborhoods regarding the outdoor seating and the music, since that is an issue that the town experiences.
And there were a few folks concerned about that this would somehow empower the theater properties well to have outdoor seating, and obviously your solution does not do that.
Yes.
And it looks like from the map, basically from Junkanoo south, there's no, until you get around the bend down by the church, there's no commercial boulevard properties.
Yeah. We're looking at the realty as you go south. The furthest north on that south end is
car wash.
the car wash and the realty at the
What
front.
about the lunch box? It obviously went from a restaurant to like a little T-shirt shop. It can go back to a restaurant.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I did have the orange and the pink because there were concerns. Some people came in and spoke, and there were concerns that if we made this change, then all of the residential in that zoning district would go away. So I just wanted to show, there's a pretty decent mix as it is. It's mostly commercial, but there are some residential uses, and there's no reason to believe that the residential uses will necessarily go away.
The hope initially was just to have this impact properties that abutted Estero Boulevard.
Yeah, and essentially all of them abut except for one residential, but the other ones are all connected.
You're right.
So speaking of the car wash and that, so what is that one zoned again?
It looks like it's zone CB. We went back through records to try, and so that's one of the things we're actually going to be working on, and we're going to talk about this next. But with the land development code, we are going to be doing some GIS work to make sure that our maps are up to date, because there's some missing information in there. So the way I did this was by going back through rezonings to see what had happened over the years and if anything referenced those properties. It appears that the car wash and that real estate office are both CB zoned. And that's based on the records from Lee County also. So they support each other, although there were things on the map that didn't appear to be completely correct. I believe this map is correct.
Okay.
No, I think looks like you've got pretty much everything covered that was discussed.
Okay.
John, you see anything?
I'm good.
Scott?
I'm good. I
Karen?
think this is gonna accomplish what Jim had hoped for, right, Jim?
Yeah, I like
Except for the one
solution.
area.
Good start.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Then we'll move on to the next one, which is the land development code.
Okay, so I wanted to take an opportunity to speak with you all about the next steps for the land development code, talking about the big items that we want to be discussing. A lot of this is going to be cleanup because there are just issues in the code that need to be resolved. And some of these will be asking you as the council, or the LPA will be asking questions, and some of them will be taking to the residents. We're going to have several workshops with residents in person and online so that people can be involved. But a big part of this is figuring out the best time to have those meetings. And I wanted to get your input on when you think people are going to be most available, when would be the best time for us to plan these workshops to have people at them.
Are you going to try to do them just in person or both?
We're going to do both, but we're probably not going to do them at the same time because it will be difficult to do both the online component and the in-person component at the same time. So probably have an in-person component where, we try to get as many people as we can in person and have those conversations and have some booths, have a couple different things going on so that everybody can get visuals and give us input on items that we think that the residents really care about. And then we're going to have a secondary meeting that's a workshop online. So anybody who wasn't able to join that original meeting can do the online. And then we're also going to have surveys available so that people can go in afterwards anytime and maybe like read a few documents, learn some things about what's going on, and take a survey so that we can get feedback and really try to hear from the most number of people in town.
So do you want to just go through one at a time and
Sure.
kind of get feedback? Would that be instead of jumping all over the place?
Yeah, that would be great. So some of these I'm just bringing them up as items, and I kind of want to find out if you guys think these are issues that we should be addressing, if you would like to be involved in that answer, or if you think the citizens should be involved in that answer. Because some of these are going to be really technical, and some of them are going to be less technical, more like just a preference. So we're definitely going to be looking at parking lots and parking lot regulations, and maybe trying to come up with a matrix, maybe trying to come up with a way to right size parking lots, because that has been a big issue. We want to make sure that there's adequate parking, but we don't want to over park the island.
Well, it's one of the first things we can do, low hanging fruit, is look at the double calculation. So if you're a bar and a restaurant,
Mhm.
it doubles up your parking space. I think that's pretty low hanging fruit.
And we keep talking about, when we're talking about parking in general, that is it so much our decision, or can we make it more for a business, for example, can we make it more of a business decision? If they think they can find alternatives to parking, then the parking issue kind of goes away.
So some communities we have minimums. Some communities do maximums. We could do a minimum and a maximum so that somebody can't say, well, I'm not going to provide any parking. We're just going to assume everybody's walking here, especially if we know that that's not what's going to happen. So we could do a minimum or a maximum, or allow some type of flexibility. They could provide micromobility options that might decrease their parking, but currently it doesn't decrease their parking. So I think there are a lot of ways to structure this, and it's been handled very differently by different communities. And it also may change if we want to do things like if there's going to be a parking garage. If you can say, well, there's a parking garage within X number of feet of this business. I mean, if you look the way Naples does it, they pay, any business opening pays for parking in the area. They just have a set amount that they're paying for each parking space that they need. But then that parking does have to be provided. So the difference there is that there have been public-private partnerships to create those parking garages. So looking at how the town wants to handle it, there are a lot of different ways to do it. So, maybe it's a conversation that we have where we put it out there at a workshop and ask people for, hey, what are your ideas about this? Do you think there's enough? Do you think there's too much? Do you think we should do X, Y, or Z? Give people some options, and then we can come back to you guys and LPA and say, hey, this is what the town is thinking. How do you guys land on this? Or, we've looked at it and this is what this community does and this is what this community does. And also we can talk with some of the other communities that are doing different things and find out how it's working for them.
Has there ever been a place where a simple calculation based on your square footage? So, for instance, I had 1,000 square feet, but now I'm going to build something back that's 3,000 square feet. Is there a way to just do an easy calculation that, if you're tripling the size of what you had or doubling the size of what you had, chances are you're going to probably need more parking than what you had before. But if you're downsizing, if you had 2,000 square feet, I don't know if that's, or percentage of the, I don't know, it could be relative across the board, but based on lot sizes.
And so would it be lot size or would it be building size?
Yeah, there's a little bit of problem with that though, Mayor, because the ADA requirements,
Yeah.
the size of the rooms, the size of the showers, the size of the hallways, people are actually having to build bigger.
Oh, sure.
So
Well, if we're looking at like hotel motels, I mean, it would be based on the number of rooms. If we're looking
Right.
at a restaurant, it's based on the number of square footage, and that's how a lot of communities do it. They base it on the square footage of the structure. But we're finding in a lot of instances that may not work the best, and it may not be the right size for this community because every community is a little different. So it really depends on what that square footage looks like. And I have known communities to allow developers to sort of come up with their own parking in special instances. For example, I had a Tractor Supply company coming in a community, and they were like, "That's too many parking spaces for us. This is how many parking spaces we need. We have this store, this store, this store, this store. We can show you the numbers." Okay. They showed us the numbers. We said, "Yeah, you can build that size parking lot. That's fine."
Well, I
Because
think
they could prove it. They knew
no matter
what they
happens,
needed.
sure, people would still be able to have that ability to come in and say, I need a variance from this because
Yes. Yeah, and they could certainly ask for a variance. The biggest issue is going to be sometimes a new business may not know what kind of parking it needs, and they're going to be limited by their lot as opposed to asking for the number of parking spaces they need. They're just going to be like, well, this is what we can fit. Is that adequate?
could we do something like we do with the setbacks on the house? You know, your property is so big, it's your setbacks are this, your lot's bigger. You know, what I mean, the bigger your lot goes, the different the calculation slides with the size of the lot.
I don't know if that's the best way to handle it because then if somebody buys a bigger lot and they say, you know, we really want to build, we own this lot, but we really only need to build a doctor's office that's this big. And we want to, you know, we really want to make the amenities very nice. So they're not going to really have more demand for parking spaces, even though they have a bigger lot.
Well, no, but you gotta have, my point is you gotta have a starting point, right? You
Mhm.
gotta have a number, whatever a number is, but
Mhm.
what's that starting number? How do you get to that and make it easier for someone that wants to buy a property or already has a property so that they know going into it when they're purchasing it, let's say, that this is what is gonna be required based on the size of this lot and potentially what I'm looking at building to put on the lot.
I would say they need to know what size building they're going to be building first before we can really say, because I mean, especially if, you know, it's a restaurant use, it depends on the size of the restaurant to how many tables will be there.
Right. But maybe I'm not saying it the right way. So if I'm going to buy a piece of property that's,
Mhm.
we'll say 50,000 square feet, and I know based on that, that I'm going to be required to have this many spaces, whatever that number is. In my head, then I can calculate what size building I can build to accommodate that. You know what I mean? Versus buying a property and not knowing how many parking spaces you're going to need because you don't know. Just try to give more information up front. And it doesn't mean you couldn't come and ask for a reduction or whatever you would need. Or I'm just trying to get a starting point for people.
I don't think it could be based on the lot.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
just because the use is what's going to drive the parking. You know, some offices are going to have lesser demand, whereas, you know, retail is going to have higher demand. You know, and then you're going to have something like beach parking that could have unlimited demand. So, you know, it's a little difficult to know that based on the lot size, but once they have the use and the square footage, and if they know, you know, we're going to have this many offices in there, that helps us. And I think that people can always kind of argue, no, we really need this many parking places, and instead of, you know, we say they need 50 and they say, no, we actually need 35 and here's why.
I mean, it'd be nice to figure out a way to incentivize them to get people to walk or bike or, you know,
Not
however
drive.
that is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like the wedding cake thing we did on the LPA, you know, went through that where you want to go up, you could come in and you can get
Mhm.
more. So if there's a way that we could, I don't know if that's possible to put in a land development code, kind of a way to, you know, if I do this, then I know I would need this many parking spots left, and
Yeah.
it becomes part of their development.
Well, I mean, one thing, so a lot of communities, when you do workforce and affordable housing or attainable housing, they decrease the number of parking spaces that you're required to provide. And that does a couple things. It makes it easier to build workforce and affordable housing, and it also ensures that you're not having like entirely too many people living in each unit. A lot of times, a workforce or affordable unit isn't going to have 5 cars. They're not going to need that many cars. So and a lot of times, the workforce and affordable housing is going to be near the business that that person works at. So that's one way to encourage it, but it doesn't do very much for the businesses. And I think that that's maybe an individual business choice. And I don't know how best to do that, but I mean, we can certainly look into it.
Fixing the easy stuff is the starting point, and then maybe we have to look at, maybe that's when you get it out there and let the public input. Once you get rid of the double parking requirements that we have on there now, in certain instances, maybe you're not dealing with as many variances as we've been dealing with. But,
Yeah.
you know, these lots are all small. We all know it, and parking is going to be a challenge at almost every property.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of extra parking to go buy or rent from other people. So there's got to be a solution. At the end of the day, the business owner is building a business, and they need to figure out what they can sustain and what they can't sustain. But
Yeah, I think you're right though. There's some low hanging fruit. I mean, you know, the doubling down like you talked about, and I also think, you know, more and more people are using golf carts or other modes of transportation and giving credits for that instead of using a vehicle, a car. More bike racks. Give a bigger credit for bike racks. You know, create some parking spaces for the golf carts. That counts as 2 instead of 1.
yeah, I mean,
sure
anything
we
to
can get
promote
creative.
leaving the car at home, I think, is a good practice.
Oh, that's the best.
Jim, you've been awful quiet over there.
No, I'm just thinking, I think about just in my own personal experience. I have a number of consulting clients that I have that come to Fort Myers Beach to visit and to talk shop, and I would always just send it over to Tuckaway Bagel because they always had parking available. It's easy to find. It's right on the Estero. Always had parking. I knew they were coming from off island, and so I'd like to keep some component of market forces in the equation. In other words, if I'm a business and, you know, I have to sort of look at my business model and determine, you know, can I survive without having some parking for my customers? I love the idea of giving additional credits for bikes and golf carts and all that stuff. That's fine. But at some point, the market's going to determine whether a establishment is going to be successful or not if their customers have access to parking or not, whether it be their own parking or be near a public lot. Or I think it's just going to have to factor into the business equation when you're putting a business together.
But from that's an excellent point. And so then why should we as a town have all, you know, extra
these
limits when the market's going to determine that? The lenders who are going to build their properties are going to demand they have so much stuff. And then market forces.
Yeah,
you know, if they don't have,
I'm not sure I disagree. I think that's what I'm wrestling with, because I think the market can solve a lot of these problems up to a point. But, you know, certainly we as an island have a public interest in incenting other forms of transportation as well, just to improve quality of life for our residents who are stuck in traffic. So it's a sticky wicket. I don't have the answer. I'm open for suggestions.
No, I think this is a perfect one to get in the hands of the public and let them kick around some ideas. And, you know, they're the ones that are using these businesses. They're the ones that are, we've all probably done it. Went to go somewhere on a rainy day and there was no place to park, so we went somewhere else.
Mhm.
But that plays into that market, you know. You don't have a place to park and it's pouring down rain, I'm gonna go find a place that does.
Mhm.
So it's all part of this would be a good
yeah,
discussion.
I think out of all these, I mean, these are all important, right? But I think this is the most important or the most controversial or needs to be solved. I mean, you know, it's like, as you said, there's interlocal agreements. There's, you know, the way Naples is doing things. Seems like every CPD that comes before us, parking,
It's an issue.
it's the big issue.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
we wrestled with
Yeah.
the last couple of them, and you know, it's there's not an easy solution, but I think, like you said, we can make it. We can let's get rid of the low hanging fruit first, but then let's get some public input and see if we can come. I mean, there's a lot of smart people on this island who can come up with some solutions.
Yeah, anything that will help. Because I've always had an issue with someone saying, well, across the street or this business has 5,000 parking spots. Why do I need to have? Well, that's their business. That's not your business. And you shouldn't be able to use that business as your parking calculation. So if we can eliminate
Unless you
some,
contract and pay for
well,
it.
unless you want to pay for it, sure, if they have the stuff to give away, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen on the island. There's not enough places to park, but there's got to be, I mean, there's a middle of the road somewhere, but starting with the easy low hanging fruit and seeing what we can get our calculations down. Is there state law requirements other than ADA as far as parking? Do you know, Nancy? I haven't been able to find any.
I'm not sure. No, I don't think so, but I have to check.
But is there requirements for
For
ADA?
ADA,
that
yeah,
are-
there's gonna be those, yes.
And then how do we address those? Salty Crab, that didn't have any parking. Now they're gonna be required to have ADA parking, and they're gonna have to figure that out. I would assume, right?
Well, I think with Salty Crab too, they're gonna have supply trucks dropping stuff off. Where they're gonna park in the middle of
Well,
Estero
that's-
Boulevard and
Yeah, we don't want to have, we're gonna have that all over.
So you might want to say that compliance with state and federal regulations and laws would be the starting point for your discussion and then proceeding forward from there.
Makes sense. John?
I'm just tired of the low hanging fruit. I prefer low hanging donuts.
Yeah.
When is the donut shop going to open?
What donut shop?
That's right.
Your donut shop,
King's Donut.
King's Donuts.
Oh.
Do you think you have enough kind of direction to
We're
go?
still
Yes.
working on parking.
Karen, Karen, do you have any?
No, I've made my comments.
Maybe a drive through.
Okay, you want to move on to number 2?
Sure. So one thing that we have talked about previously were the list of public benefits. I think that we did get some input from council regarding these, and I think that this would be a really good thing for the public to weigh in on. Like, what do they think these public benefits are? Do they agree? You know, what are the things that the citizens really want in new developments? So I thought that was a good item to sort of put out there and then add to the list and then figure out a way that we really work it into the code.
And do they want to see an itemized list? Because that list could change over time. So
It's true.
does
Yeah.
it make sense to have an itemized? That'd be a question to ask.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be all encompassing.
Right. But I mean,
And different parts of the island have different
Exactly.
benefits.
Each location has
And
its own.
bigger properties are going to be able to offer more,
That's another
obviously.
Yeah.
But there's,
it's good public discussion.
Since it is public.
That was easy. We'll move on to the next one.
Once she's done writing.
We need to get you a second here. You're going to type really fast. Nicole's like, don't look at me.
I was gonna say Mark's right there.
Or Jason, your Jason.
Yeah.
Jason's father went back.
So something else so we've been getting a lot of requests for additional height. So looking at ways that we could automatically qualify people for additional height. That was one idea. So, you know, this might play into the list of public benefits, but looking at impacts to the adjacent properties, looking at maybe increasing setbacks for additional height, maybe doing LEED or sustainable development, maybe giving workforce housing, but some options so that people can automatically get a story or two more for public benefits that the town wants and will be beneficial to the future.
One of the things we talked about, and I don't think it ever got codified, was, you know, when you're building back to base flood elevation, I know there was discussion about if you go to the 3 foot above freeboard, so you're going higher, that would potentially allow you to go an extra story.
It is codified.
It is.
Yeah, I
couldn't
do
remember
believe
if they
so.
did it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're allowed. Actually,
I don't know that we ever did.
if they're doing no, the way that it's written is you get the 3 extra feet, but that doesn't give you an extra story. But then the carrots and sticks can get you to the extra story if you do the different things that,
That's what it was.
yeah.
The extra
that was
5
how-
feet.
yeah, they get extra 5 feet and an additional story.
I like the idea of the LEED and the green building certification. That's pretty good outside the box thinking thing.
What's
Um,
that? Yeah.
Which is basically your green building certified.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So lower energy use, like
Oh, green,
better,
okay.
yeah,
Got it.
better air quality, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that could be.
Do you guys think that that would be a good conversation for the public in general, or do you think that would be better in a meeting?
I think definitely the public, in my opinion, to be, height's gonna be an issue that we're
Yeah.
gonna be dealing with
Yeah.
coming up. And
But
How
don't
does-
you think we should limit? There's got to be a max, like in the downtown district.
oh, I agree. Again, it goes back to that different sections of the island have different things that could fit in or couldn't fit in.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, based on the zoning district or based on.
And based on what's around you.
Yeah.
And what fits and what
Right.
doesn't fit.
Yeah, if you're right next to single story,
Right, then you can't
homes,
have a
then-
10-story building.
so maybe a transect kind of situation where if you're within a certain distance, you can't be more than, I know that's how they do it. Siesta Key, maybe. Up north, there are a couple different communities that have really interesting ways of looking at their height.
Yeah, because this is an interesting one because as time has gone on, people, they're one way or another, their opinion on height is shifting.
Mhm.
Some are going one way and some are going the other way, but how do you, 2 stories above what's there now versus 10 or 12 or 15 stories,
Mhm.
how do you differentiate between that? Is there anything really that someone could do that would allow someone to put whatever, say 10 stories because they're giving up this or they're doing this? Is that something that the public really wants to see?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question that, yeah, we need to know how people, maybe there are certain benefits that they feel are enough. Like, sure, you can build a 10-story building if you give the town a brand new park. I don't know what the trade would
Right,
be,
I
but
don't- I have a feeling.
I think for sure, the setbacks, because we're seeing that with some of the, proposed stuff coming in.
Mhm.
They could build a big, huge box that's 4 stories, but it looks a whole lot better,
If it's the
Mhm.
wedding cake thing.
wedding
or-
cake
Yeah.
or
yeah, so they're
we have a
lower
bigger,
towards the street
right,
and
or
then
a better
higher
view
further back.
corridor.
And mhm.
Well, I think people are getting more flexible because they're actually seeing some of these designs that the architects are coming up with, and they do have stair-step approach, and they do have more setbacks, and it makes it more palatable, I think, and also depending on where in the development they are. Is this at the back of the lot where it's not against any road or anything like that? So a lot of it, I think that ideas have been shifting because of designs we've been seeing.
I think this is definitely one for the public.
Another one is public art. This has come up several times over the years, but we don't really have a way to sort of incentivize public art. I know that everybody has different opinions about what is art and what is not art. But
Graffiti.
one option would be, to sort of have a theme that the community recommends. Say, you want to give public art. Well, our theme is dolphins. Our theme is sea turtles, or whatever the town would want. Because there are a lot of communities that do, like Kansas City and the cows. Different places have different themes. There's another community with mermaids. If we wanted to do something like that and kind of pick out a theme and say, if you want to do public art, we would like, and then have a way for people to do that and incentivize it with, maybe as one of the options for public benefits.
Are we going down a slippery slope with this one? Because what I consider art and what you consider art might be 2 completely different things. But if I'm your neighbor and what I consider art is completely obtrusive to you, but I get to have more because my version of art is different than yours, are we going down what's
Well-
that you used? Sticky wicked?
Sticky wicket.
Is that putting us in a sticky wicked?
So, you kind of have to decide, because you can't both encourage art and discourage artistic options.
But couldn't we just leave it at that? I mean, couldn't we just say, we encourage you to, or, I mean, in their, whatever they're going to do, they can certainly present, like 7-Eleven did when they came through for their side of their buildings. They, at the time that they're coming through asking for what they're asking for, that's when they can present their art. People then can all comment on it and say, we love it, hate it. You know,
What about the buildings that are already there? Do they have to come in and get a
Good
permit
point.
to do it?
why would-
Well, and I don't think, I mean, as it is right now, somebody can paint.
Right.
Somebody can install a, you know, some things might require a building permit. If you wanted to do a fountain, something that required electric, something, you know, there are a variety of permits that may be required. But if they just wanted to paint something, if they just wanted to put a little statue, something like that wouldn't require a permit.
But if you put this
Mhm.
as on the list of public benefits, then each individual location can come in with their proposal, and it either through the development agreement or the CPD, and then the LPA and the council have a chance to review it,
Mhm.
and they have a chance to determine whether that art was a public benefit or not. I almost think it has to be case by case. I mean, it's
And then are we getting into the whole First Amendment?
Yes,
freedom of
we
expression?
are.
That's
That
kinda
is
what-
the sticky side.
Yeah.
You can't really regulate the content of it. It's going to be artistic expression, but you can't like show preference for different, because then you are regulating content. So it's not real clear, and it's kind of problematic at times.
And is this really broken? I mean, the way it is now?
It's not broken, but I would say for an island that a lot of islands do see themselves as sort of artistic havens.
Mhm.
And a lot of island communities kind of lean towards that. It's just an option I put out there because art is an investment in your community, and you would need to potentially encourage it if you want to get it.
So could you just say you encourage it as a potential form of public benefit, as opposed to saying it is a public benefit, or it will get you something more if you do something
just
artistic?
put it on the list of public benefits,
Yeah,
and then
that's a
let
potential public
everybody
benefit,
enjoy.
But then I still go back to, what do you do with people that already have buildings and they're just going to paint something?
We couldn't stop them right now anyway if we wanted to. That freedom of expression.
So
We
then
couldn't-
nothing would change there.
Pretty much, I wouldn't think. It would be-
I don't think it'll
Well,
change.
You're just going to paint them in what regard? I'm sorry.
Well,
They're
like-
going to put a piece of art up now.
Well, like they put a mural on
Right.
the side of the building, or they put yard art of some sculpture, or I love Fort Myers Beach, or whatever it may be.
Right. So
But-
it would fall into the same category.
But they can do that now, no matter what.
Mhm.
And they don't have to come and get permission, is what I'm saying, from anyone to do that. It's just their property that they want to decorate the way they want to decorate.
I think it's pretty simple, just like you said, Vice Mayor, it's, you could put it on the potential list, or the list of
Mhm.
public benefit
Possible,
and possible public, but it doesn't,
On a
there's
case.
no artwork that
Mhm.
guarantees you something more because you're doing something artistic.
The next item is drive-throughs. So one section of our code says you can't do a drive-through. Another section of the code says you can do drive-throughs. So this has been an issue.
This could be important for you down there.
So,
You don't.
yeah, if you want your donut, drive-through donut shop. So I didn't know if this was something that, council wanted to weigh in on or bring before. I mean, because there are a whole variety of things that are drive-throughs at this point. In the past it was McDonald's, or there weren't very many options. Now, a drive-through coffee shop, it's your bank, it's
Do we
a lot
run
of
the risk
things.
of encouraging chains to locate here versus indigenous restaurants?
I don't think that it increases or decreases the likelihood. I mean, at this point, the cost of land is what's driving those types of decisions. And can they make enough money on a McDonald's to make it worth their while? I mean, because they're still going to have the regulations regarding stacking. And so they're going to have additional land. They won't be able to back out onto the streets, that sort of thing. So, I mean, I feel like it's a preference issue. And I don't know what your preference is.
I don't see a lot of mom and pops that have drive-throughs. And obviously our banks are losing interest in opening new branches.
No, I don't know about
I
that.
must tell you, at Santini Plaza, they are having a drive-through ATM with Synovus Bank. So it's that could be, and of course they've got a lot of parking and space to do it, but I don't think that's the drive-through that you're thinking about. Though.
Well, I mean, but it is a drive-through, so it would fall under these regulations, and we just need, like which side does everybody fall on? We need to either allow them or don't allow them, or allow them with X. In
So
a
when you
little bit, I'm
said
going to
this-
get to
th-
something,
there's-
but
We're going both ways.
Mhm.
One section allows, what are those two sections and where?
I
so it's just
didn't put it
contra-
in here. I would have to
What's,
go back.
so
to mine.
what you're saying, we just have to clean it up. The other
Yes.
side's
Yeah.
aware
We
of it.
we have contradictory code sections, and we just need to know which direction to go with it. I think
Okay.
staff has no preference.
I think, like you said, I mean, there's donut shops, there's banks. The bank's going to want to have a drive up. I mean, people aren't going to want to get out in the rain or the heat or anything. I mean,
Yeah, I'd make an exception for a bank, but I don't think we want to encourage fast food chains.
I don't know. Like she said, I don't know where you can buy the land to make it work.
Yeah, and is it counterproductive to the whole get out of your car movement, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Ride your bike.
And I know some communities have concerns regarding people walking and all that, because you have to have two curb cuts if you have a drive-through. Essentially, you have to have one to go in and one to come out. And there are a lot of concerns with pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic with those entries and exits. So
So
that's
could you
something to think
say
about.
not allowed with the exception of, and what are the, other than a bank, I mean,
And the CVS.
and the CVS, yeah, I mean,
The
pharmacy, you know.
Like
Is
dry cleaner.
all right,
yeah, I mean, well, okay, so
No,
this is this is later. This is later in the
Liquor store.
this is later in the number 12 on the list here is conditional uses. So it's possible that a drive-through could be a conditional use when associated with X, Y, or Z uses, and you meet X, Y, and Z criteria for pedestrian visibility, landscaping, and noise. Or
But I think, isn't that what we're trying to get rid of though? I mean, to me, that sounded just very muddy.
no,
Like,
can,
I
a
can do this,
condition.
but I need to do this.
A conditional use means, and this is how I think we could really clean up our code. A conditional use is you are allowed to do this thing if you meet these conditions, and it's usually criteria having to do with the issues that they create.
Okay, I see what you're
So, like one of the problems with drive-throughs is the noise coming out of that box. Wah, wah, wah. People don't like it when they live behind them. They're like, I constantly hear this wah, wah, wah,
Charlie Brown's
drive-through.
teacher.
And so if you put in the appropriate landscaping, if you put in the appropriate, like a whole variety of things that ameliorate the issues that those uses create, then you're allowed to do that use. If you choose to not do those, meet those
I can see how
conditions,
that would fit.
then you have to get it
Makes
through a
sense.
special exception. So if you really want this drive-through use, then do this, 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 and this. You can have your drive-through use. If you don't want to do those things, you have to go in front of the LPA and the town council and tell them why you don't think you need those things. So that actually, I think, would help reduce the number of people coming to you to ask for things that, well, if you handle your noise and you handle your landscaping, we don't care. Parking lots are a perfect example of that. At grade, parking lots where somebody is willing to install landscaping and their, whatever 5 things. Do you guys care? Do you want this to come in front of you? Do you want to talk about landscaping for a parking lot? We can make that conditional use. If you meet all 5 of the conditions required for this use, it doesn't have to go to LPA and council. So we're saving time, we're saving money for them, time for you. So I think conditional uses could be one of those things that would be really beneficial to the town.
Could we then maybe instead of it just specifically calling it drive-through, could
Mhm.
this be conditional uses and that could be a public part of a discussion? Because
Yeah.
now this is one of many that you just mentioned, parking lots and
Yeah.
landscape buffers. Is that conditional use text, if you will?
Mhm.
Does that make more sense to have that conversation versus specifically drive-through?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do have to determine, like, do we never want them or do we sometimes want them? But, then it sounds like we sometimes want them in certain instances, but not all instances.
I mean,
So we can right size
I don't
it.
know if we want to completely close the door. I mean,
Yeah.
It seems like we're all very much in providing as many options. And if there's an option out there for a CVS or Walgreens or something that may potentially want to come in, this just leave that they're telling them no, they can't have it. I don't know if that's always a good idea.
Okay. I think that works. I understand. Moving on to accessory structures, setbacks, and dimensions. This is an item that we discussed previously, but I realized it touches a lot of code sections. So this is something that we're going to need to talk about. What is an accessory structure? Is it the same thing as an accessory dwelling unit? When do they have to be attached? When do they not have to be attached? What setbacks do they have to meet? Because right now, accessory structures have a much smaller setback. But if we're talking about an accessory dwelling unit, that could be like the size of a house. It's elevated, it's big. Do you really want them to have lesser setbacks? So really looking at what's explained in the code and what's not explained in the code. So it's just more clear what's allowed and what isn't.
Yeah, we had a sticky wicket on this with someone that wanted to build back what the exact same thing that they had, and because of this text, they had to go through hoops that they shouldn't have had to go through.
Yeah.
So to your point, if I'm going to put a shed that is not attached to my house, is that any different than if I'm going to do a mother-in-law suite that's not attached to my house? Obviously, you've got other things that fall in place there as far as height and builds and all that stuff that comes through in a different way. But is that looked at any different than a shed, or should it be? Is that is that a pretty good example?
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect example. Is the shed the same thing as mother-in-law's suite? Or once it gets over a certain square footage, is it something different? Should it have the same setbacks as sorry.
Is it, can you use words like habitable? If it's going to be a habitable structure, then does that now not be considered an exist?
Well, yeah. And I think that's what we need to look at, figure out how do we right size this code section so it meets the needs of the community and really addresses all of the issues that we see pretty regularly.
Nancy, is there any state statutes that this could fall under when it comes to if I'm building my primary house and then because we had some on the island, we still have some on the island that had an accessory use or had a mother-in-law suite or whatever you wanted to call it that was maybe on the front of the property. Is there any state statute out there that dictates
I think
that they
it's
have
more,
to be the same setbacks or not?
No, I think it's more discretionary and based on home rule powers that you have, that you can decide that. Unless it's like some kind of group home or something like that.
And how does this play into our dreaded Senate Bill 250 as far as if we were to change the definition as we see it now as an accessory structure? Could that be more restrictive on someone that wants to build a mother-in-law suite or?
Well, and I think our goal with this is going to not run askance of or.
Yeah, I didn't know what you mean.
Yeah. Our goal is to not run into that issue. We're not trying to make anything more restrictive, but in some instances, it's just really not clear. Or in some instances, it's really restrictive for one thing, and maybe we want to make it more like the other. Like whenever you're looking at accessory dwelling units that don't meet the density are required to be separate structures. Accessory dwelling units that do meet the density are required to be attached. It doesn't make any sense. So like if we just make it all the same, so it's like you can do either one with either of these, but these are the setbacks, and make it clear what these structures are and what their setbacks are, because in our code it just currently isn't.
But we do have to be mindful of SB 250 and we are. So it's clarifying some of the existing language is what I'm hearing, and perhaps even making it less restrictive than it currently is.
Well, and I get so just using a shed, for instance, you mentioned that a shed would have less of a setback than a habitable structure or accessory. So let's say if you were to say we want to make a shed have the same setback as a habitable structure, are you then now making it more restrictive because you're putting more of a setback on someone for a shed, for instance, versus in what they had before?
So I think that that probably would be,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's what we want to do. I mean, we're not trying to make it harder for somebody to build a shed. We're just trying to make it more clear when they're doing something what they need to do. Because that's our problem is not so much that the code is wrong as or bad as it's unclear. It does not clearly state what it needs, and we want to make sure that it's understandable to everybody reading and it makes sense.
Well, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how you can, construction wise, how you could do it, how you could, most sheds aren't gonna have a toilet and more plumbing or running water, whereas a shed might have electric in it,
Mhm.
or it might have an air conditioner in it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to have anything that would allow you to stay for any long period of time inside.
Well, and if
it.
it's at grade, then it can't have a certain number of things in
Right.
FEMA. So, I mean, and I think that's probably one of the restrictions. I mean, one of the
That's
issues
not
with the
necessarily
living,
true.
well, theoretically, in a dwelling unit, if you're building a new one, it's going to be elevated. So you're talking now about a taller structure, whereas that a shed is not a dwelling unit, it's not livable space, so it can be accurate. And I think that we would look at that potentially very differently because it has less of an impact on the adjacent property if you have a little shed at grade versus a 2-story dwelling.
To me, it just keeps going back to inhabitable. Like if it doesn't have a bedroom, doesn't have a shower, doesn't have whatever, is that
Yeah,
considered?
dwelling.
It's not a
Mhm.
dwelling, right? It's not a place that you could actually live.
Yes. Well, and we also need to have better definitions of dwelling units because that's something that's kind of weird in our code. So having a definition that's clear and
Just
what
clear.
most
Yeah.
communities have would be
So you're just trying to.
Obscure on a dwelling unit.
I know. It's,
it, it can have a kitchen, but it doesn't have to have a kitchen.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Could have.
Who has a house without a kitchen? It's not a house if it doesn't. I mean, you have to have.
well, then you get
somewhere
into
to
what
cook.
constitutes a kitchen, right?
Right.
Well, yeah, but
I mean, you
but
could go down a rabbit
most
hole here.
Microwave.
most communities do define it as a 220 plug. So that's what most communities do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it sounds like it solved one problem.
yeah, it just needs to be in the code.
Yeah, as you say, or-
Yeah, right, you know, your jar is 221, whatever.
We can find different ways to slice it and dice it. However, I think having a clear definition and having just clarifying what the code intends so that staff knows how to implement it, so that somebody coming in knows what they can build and what they can't.
Sounds like you're well on your way to an answer.
Perfect. We also wanted to talk about architectural features that have additional height. That was previously in the code. We had to take it out due to some people doing things where they were creating extra stories and calling them architectural features, that type of thing. So finding a better way, because people have asked how they can have these additional architectural features. We agree. They do add to a community in the look. But we need to find a better way to do it so that people aren't just adding stories and height to their house.
But Sarah, that's a great one, and we certainly want to encourage that. And I know there's people that abuse that, but that's something with your technical expertise or the lawyer's technical expertise. I don't think that's something that you put before the public. That's something for the subject matter
Yes.
experts to
Yeah.
Yeah,
figure
no,
out. Yeah.
I would agree.
But I
Yeah.
agree. We want to encourage that because it makes the community interesting.
Right.
And I think that since we pulled it out of there, we actually have a better opportunity to add it back in more carefully. Because with SB 250, if we hadn't pulled it out, it would just be whatever it is. But now we can add to it, allow some additional height, allow some specific things, and we're not causing problems with SB 250. So I think this is a good opportunity. We have a bunch of changes we need to do to match up with the comprehensive plan. Those are all going to be pretty straightforward to knock out and put together properly. Clearer uses in the use table. Right now we don't have a lot of things. It's pretty unclear what a bank is. We don't have bank in our use table. So, is it an office? What is that? So having more clarity in our use table, having better definitions will be helpful. When want to include more graphics and diagrams so it's easier to understand visually what we've got. But we are going to be really careful with those because I've been through more than a few codes that have diagrams that are just not helpful. You know, you look at them and you don't understand what it's trying to tell you. So we're going to be really careful about what we got. We're going to need to look at the redevelopment districts. That was something that was a component of the comprehensive plan update. So right now, the redevelopment districts have some very specific language in them. We're talking about downtown, Commercial Boulevard, Santini, and the Village zoning district. So they have specific criteria about how those have to be redeveloped. Is that what we want still? Is that the vision we're pursuing? Does it still work? I don't know that. I don't know if this would be better as a public like a public workshop conversation. Like, what do we want to see in these areas? Or if this is, we leave it alone and see what people come in.
Well, to me, this kind of falls into that same thing with the commercial boulevard that we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You want to pigeonhole yourself into one usage because it's in this zoning district, or times change, things that people want to do change. 15 years ago, nobody ever heard of pickleball, right? And now pickleball is a big thing. So what's going to be 10 years from now? To me, it would make sense to keep this as open-ended as possible, maybe through the public forum to find out. But to me, again, it's an option. It's an option thing to keep open.
Okay.
I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but
I'd like to see it more open, and I'd love to see the input.
Sounds good. And then the next page, we're looking at conditional uses, which I already went over with you guys. But if anybody has some questions. And then landscaping buffers. I mean, we pretty much adopted Lee County's landscaping buffers. They're awfully big. They don't really make sense for a small town. And we need to reevaluate what makes sense between our uses and where we really need these buffers. Right now, we require pretty wide buffers in strange places. Maybe we just need them between the commercial and the residential. Maybe there's some leeway there, and maybe there are places that we want to make sure we do keep the landscaping buffers because they're beneficial.
and again, this is another one of those that seems like we're fighting ourselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting people to try to incentivize them to give us bigger view corridors, but then we're requiring them to fill it in with all this greenery. It takes away the view corridor they just fought for. We just fought to keep. So
Yeah.
This one has always been baffling to me. It's very counterproductive, and I hate continuing to use that word, but I appreciate where you're taking it.
I'm still very concerned about the buffers that are going to go in by the bridge and try to keep people from crossing.
Oh,
and,
that's gonna be it.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be a nightmare, and it's going to die off. There's no sprinklers. There's no nothing. I mean, it's going to be bad.
Well, we're not maintaining.
Yeah, but neither do they.
I think. Well, you're talking about the base of the bridge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's all. Margaritaville, I think, has agreed to maintain that.
Oh, well, that's helpful because they did a beautiful job.
So the last item is, when do you guys think the public workshop makes the most sense? I mean, we want to do it sooner than later, but we also want to do it when people are going to be around.
I think that's going to be an issue no matter what. So if you're going to do one in person and one
Online.
virtual, I think you're going to cover both your bases. So people that want to be involved, you probably have a bigger turnout on the Zoom than you will in person this time of year.
I think you do the Zoom first
Yeah.
and then in person, as more people get back.
Makes sense.
What's your time frame to match up when we get the comp plan back?
So you'll have the comp plan in front of you on the 19th.
Back from the state already?
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
And we've addressed all the comments. So I'm going to be
That's
dropping it
amazing.
into the agenda, and you guys will have it for you.
August
Well,
19th?
Yep.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was talking about it at the beginning. The last time we had this comp plan discussion, that was way too much information, in my opinion, in one meeting. I think by the end of the meeting, you could just look around and see everybody was glazed over, and I think things got missed. I don't know if it makes sense to break it up into 2 meetings. I mean, you start getting into hour 6 and hour 7 of talking about comp plans, it's people have just, they don't even know what they're talking about anymore half the time. And I think we missed some things in that initial discussion simply because of that.
Okay.
So I don't want to draw it out any longer than it needs to, but I would hate for something to get through that we didn't mean to get through, or vice versa. We missed something that we wanted to get through.
Then you're bringing it up in September when we've got the budget and it's 9 o'clock at night.
Well, it would be the first meeting. It wouldn't be the second one. Because you'd have to have 2 readings of it, I would assume, right?
No,
Yeah.
you have the first meeting. You have the
Oh,
first.
that's right, because it's,
We had the first
the
already, then we
transmittal
send it
we
to the
did.
state, and then we get it back, and second is
different.
the adoption.
So does the review of the comp plan have to be as laborious as we're talking about? In other words, we've vetted it relatively well. It seems to me as staff, you could highlight anything that might be controversial or different or of concern, right? I mean, do we have to go through it all page by page because we've done it initially?
The only thing that has changed are going to be in the pages at the beginning. They were driven by comments we received. We didn't receive any comments from Department of Commerce. We received a few comments from FDOT, FDEP, and Water District, maybe Water Management District.
Yeah,
But
obviously- yeah,
those
obviously,
changes.
We would want to see those changes,
Yeah.
but again, if individual members of the council have concerns or have heard concerns since it's been submitted, they can be raised, but
Mhm.
I don't think it involves a
In
page
depth
by
thing,
page.
right?
you know.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
Yeah,
I mean, we certainly don't have to make it laborious. We can go over just the changes and then any questions that you guys have, or we could break it up into 2 meetings. That is an option.
Well, I guess I didn't know how elaborate it was going to be, but to your point, I don't think we're going to go each section page by page like we did before, because that's already been done.
Yeah.
But there is at least 1 or 2 things in there that afterwards, when I went back and watched it, I don't think that was what our intent was. But now that it's in the new version of the comp plan, that's going to have a drastic impact on some of the development on this island if it goes through the way that it is.
Okay.
So FAR and density, for instance, that those 2 things, I don't think the way that it's in the comp plan now, or the revised comp plan, I don't think that we had enough time, because it was late in the meeting, to really discuss what that looks like or potentially could look like on some of these bigger acre properties.
Mhm.
And to memorialize that in a comp plan, you could be taking out any of this public benefit negotiation stuff that we've been talking
right, and
about.
those would be the type of issues.
That's the
we would
ones
highlight,
that,
yeah.
the big ones like that are the ones that I would want to make sure that we really look at.
So could we prioritize like some of the issues that we've been seeing as we've gone from there and prioritize those first? Because I think as we go further, they're not as in depth and not as highlighted
Right.
as what we've seen.
At the beginning.
Yeah, if we did those at the beginning, then we probably could get through the rest pretty quickly.
Can I ask what you would want to see and what you would need that discussion to look like for some of these items, just to make sure that we're prepared? And if you want,
Well, we would need to see from you what's the presentation going to look like? What does it look
I
like
mean,
now that it's come back from the state? We haven't seen it.
well, I mean, but you were talking about FAR. The FAR hasn't changed, so that wasn't required to change. But if
No, but how things are calculated, how the equivalency factor went in, there were some changes
we
in there.
didn't the equivalency factors in the LDC.
But there, see, this is to my point.
Yeah.
There was so much that went on in there. I can't remember off the
Mhm.
top of my head exactly but there was something along those realms,
Mhm.
and how it was going to relate to one of the developments that was proposed to be coming through.
Mhm.
The change that we had talked about would have given them what they wanted to do by right, should they were able to get the zoning request that they wanted to do. And that was not our intent.
So the land development in the comprehensive plan, we took out the requirement to do the equivalency factor, but the land development code still has that requirement. So the comprehensive plan does not have to direct that. The land development code can still contain that, and it can still be effective. The way they wrote the comprehensive plan, it did direct the land development code to have it. But we took that out. because that was part of the discussion, but it's still in the land development code. It's still in effect, even though the comprehensive plan doesn't say you have to have it. So until it gets removed from the land development code, it's still in effect. So us removing it from the comprehensive plan didn't like invalidate it.
Lot to talk about.
Yes.
But again, I think. If
I just
that's-
want to make
if
sure
that's
that
what
we're
gonna talk
prepared.
about on the 19th.
Mhm.
The sooner we get, that's a lot of information, and the sooner we can get it
Presentation.
would be better. I mean, sometimes we don't get stuff till Thursday night.
Mhm.
And if there's other things on the agenda, you're focusing all your time to review and do things, in this case, on the comp plan. And you don't have a lot of time between Friday and Monday to get everything caught up. So
Yeah.
the sooner we can see what we're going to be discussing, the better off.
Okay.
Would be, right, Andy?
And I'm trying to get the complete, I have the changes, but I don't have the complete comp plan. So I reached out to the consultant to make sure that I have the most up-to-date version, and then I'll get it on the agenda.
Is it comp plan sans maps, or is future land use map included? And-
Yes,
And so we will see all that as well.
yes.
So that's something, to the mayor's point, it all went so quickly. I'd love to see some of those maps and, in maybe a hard copy. So we
Well,
can
it's
actually.
changed
Okay.
so many times. Every time Eddie's been here, it's this and then it's this. Where did it land? Where did it land?
And I can get you hard copies.
Yeah, if we can, I mean, it doesn't have to be.
I
even
printed
ahead
them.
of the
I
agenda, if we
printed
can
them
get a
off
hard-
last time and left them at my house, so we have them.
Oh, perfect. Good deal.
So I think we have covered everything that I needed to cover. Did you guys have any suggestions, questions about items that you think need to be covered? That are big issue items?
I brought it up before, and I don't know if this is in your purview, what you're trying to look at on the land development, because we talked about parking garages a little earlier. And there's some buffers in there that have to come in that's currently in the code that just don't make sense to be able to do
Yeah.
parking. Is that something you guys are going to look at? Speaking of the parking?
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
the way the code's written now, it's almost impossible to put a parking garage on the island.
Yeah. And I mean, the way they talk about that design of the parking garage makes sense. I've seen that in a lot of communities, but the size lots that we have here, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work very well.
Mhm.
So I understand what you're saying, and we recognize that, and we'll make changes to give people other options for building these, because it is something the community wants and would utilize. So I think that makes sense.
All right. Anything else? Okay.
Good.
Good.
That's that?
Good.
Good. We're good.
Fantastic.
Good.
Thank you guys.
Okay. The next item, where are we at? Item B,
Consent agenda.
bridge tolls. Is that right? Is that the next one?
Mhm.
Karen, you want to start?
I can do that. So I had brought up as a suggestion of something to look at, putting tolls on the bridge to help monitor traffic, to help with cut throughs, that type of thing. So I worked a lot with Andy and team, and we worked in conjunction with Dave Harner from Lee County. And we ended up getting, it didn't go very far, let's put it that way. So I received a letter actually through Kevin Ruane, and it came from, it basically came from their attorneys. And it stated why at this point in time and the timing of everything, we are a long way out of even considering a bridge toll, if at all. So basically it said, the Matanzas Bridge Pass is a state-owned and maintained facility located, blah, 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 blah. According to the statute, the department may establish tolls on new limited access facilities on the state highway system. Lanes added to existing limited access facilities on the state highway system, or new major bridges on the state highway system over waterways, and replacements for existing major bridges on the state highway over waterways. In other words, it could be added. However, in the case of the Matanzas Bridge, it's not being replaced. So therefore, according to plain language in the statute, it does not appear that we have the ability to impose tolls because we are not having a new bridge or a replacement bridge. The Big Carlos Bridge, that is a whole different situation. The Big Carlos Pass Bridge is currently being replaced and the project is under construction. The bridge project is being funded with local monies, federal highway administration monies, and CARES Act federal monies. According to discussions, according to Rob Price, the discussion to implement a new toll facility would have had to take place with the federal government prior to applying for and acquiring the federal monies and commencement of the construction. So needless to say, it's under construction. That's all been approved. There is no way to go back to that right now. It would have to be at a totally different time and place after the bridge is already constructed. And it would open up a whole new ordinance amendment, everything else that would have to take place and funding mechanism. So at this point, it doesn't look like there's any leeway at all for either bridge to have a toll. But I do appreciate some of the comments that I received. Not all. I got comments.
Or you did.
But you know,
Paying
this is
attention.
why you bring things up like this. It's talked about casually and everybody wants to know why or why not. And as we did our due diligence, we found out there is absolutely no way that this is going to happen now or anytime in the near future. So that's where we are at that discussion.
Well, that was an easy short.
Also, didn't you also find out that you can't? There's no cut through provision. Like in Texas, they have some tollways where if you cut through, you get at the airport, at DFW airport, where if you cut through instead of picking somebody up, you get charged. But if you go pick someone up and take the other exit, you don't get charged. But my understanding that in Florida, and you may know this, that you can't differentiate reasons of passage on a road. In other words, you can't do that.
I mean,
I'm not
that never
certain
came
about
up in
that.
the conversations or anything like that. So
I mean, you
Yeah,
have
let's see.
express lane, but
Maybe
Yeah.
it's
kind of what
expressed.
you're, I guess
Right.
it's the flip side of what you're describing.
Let me see.
because in this, you'd be
Express
paying a
lane,
toll to come
lane.
in one way, but paying a toll when you go home the other way.
So in
You could do
Florida,
that.
tolls are generally applied uniformly to all vehicles passing through toll roads or bridges, regardless of the specific destination or purpose to travel. Whereas in Texas, you can
You can-
delineate between the
Which
The
way?
purple.
Yeah.
purpose of travel.
That conversation never came up at all because we were pretty
Because
much,
it's mute, because you can't
Right.
even put a toll on there.
but I mean, based on what we got back and, you know, in working with Lee County and everything, it's just, it's not even something that is even in the short term line of sight. So,
I will say I support Nestle Toll House cookies.
okay, next item.
Moving on. Consent agenda public comment. Whose item was this?
I think that might have been mine.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
And I think today, the way we handled the consent agenda and the administrative agenda took care of a lot of that issue for me. I know I had shared with Andy previously that the fire department has on their agenda what exactly the consent agenda means and how it's handled. So I think we could, if we want to remain the way the consent agenda has been in the past, I would like to see that added to the agenda so the public would know what to expect. But if we're going to move to where we're going to discuss these issues all the time anyway, I'm okay with the way it is. But maybe, and I think we saw it again today with the woman that was was concerned about her flooding, she was expecting us to address her. And if there's a way to let the public know that this is public comment, if you have a concern, then see us afterwards. But just so the public knows what to expect when they come here, because not everybody comes here.
Is that something maybe Nancy, you could put in, like I've got that really nice cheat sheet that I read all the time for that.
Yes.
Is there something that we could have to, like, to John's
Laminated.
point, that's saying, here is our policy for public comment, and before we open public comment, we could say,
Would you like us, I can work with Amy, maybe put it on the agenda
yeah, just a
itself?
little- yeah, just something to read that, when we open public comment, if you're asking specific questions, you know what I mean? Just to let them, to John's point, let them know that, so they're not standing up there waiting for us to respond.
It becomes awkward.
Can't guarantee that, but I think we can.
Or something, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, so we'll work on some language maybe to follow public comment there for an explanation.
Yeah, just a,
That's fine.
And then you're still gonna have consent. Do you want any type of description there on consent items that are administrative in nature?
I will leave that up to your discussion, Mr. Town Manager.
This time I pretty well looked at, obviously it was a lot of one-time such things that didn't come up in the budget that affected money. So I said, okay, these need to be discussed more. And that pretty much is what I looked at. It's like, if it's, $40,000, which it wouldn't be, but I'm just using that number, maybe it go in consent. But if it's, 200,000, 250, $1 million, obviously it needs a little more explanation. This is what, because that's kind of what we've looked at as we've gone through the last year. Oh, I'm going to move this because we just need more explanation of really why we're spending $1 million, that kind of thing. That's kind of how I just kind of looked at it this time. And we felt that would create a pretty good balance. And we went through it pretty quick. It wasn't,
I thought it flowed
wasn't
really well
very
today.
long. And staff's ready to get up and talk about their particular area. And that way it's boom, cut and dry.
Well, and there's certain times that I would ask for something to be removed because it's an opportunity for public attention.
Exactly.
Like, for example, the farmer's market moving to Santini Plaza.
Oh, yeah.
It gives the applicant a chance to kind of tell their story, and it's a lot of people are watching this posting.
Good point.
So that I think the system can work. We just got to manage it. a little
And,
bit.
some of those repetitive things that the hurricane emergency orders.
Sure.
Right.
Okay. We all rubber stamp.
I think it
Other
sets
things.
expectation for time too. So if you have 10 things on the
Correct.
consent agenda and
Correct.
someone thinks that the consent agenda is going to be that, maybe one thing comes off, but when the entire consent agenda was coming off now, someone that thought they were going to be here for 10 minutes to speak is now here for an hour. And
So
30
if
minutes.
it goes out like that, like it did today, oh, we already know. We've got 10 things here versus 12 here. We're going to pull 10 of those off. Now we got 22 over here instead of, even though when we do the consent and pull them off, it's pretty quick. It's not a long drawn out.
But I think when you get into the public hearing part of it,
Optics.
when lawyers are sitting out there, or,
Optics.
people can budget their time a little
Yes, sir.
better.
We can do it.
Yeah, I thought it flowed fairly.
I thought it was great
Today
today,
was-
especially even after a layoff.
Yeah.
Good job out of
Getting
you.
out of practice.
Efficient government.
All right. Anything else with this one, John?
No, thank
All
you.
right. We'll move on to agenda management. Anybody, Scott, anything on agenda management?
Well, tolls are out.
Except cookies.
Except in Texas.
I think
Oh,
we spoke
yeah.
about it, the e-bikes. I think that we should tackle that and get it put to bed. I think everybody wants a solution. So the sooner the better. That's all I have. I guess.
Okay. Council Woodson?
I just think, I don't know how many people actually see this, but it is published, so we should change that final budget hearings to after, or I'm sorry, change our council meeting to after. We have it there, but if we have update tier 1 project, we have it at 9:23 at 9 a.m. So that needs to be after budget meetings. But other than that, and I know some of these things are in process, but what is light pole decorating along Estero Boulevard? What is that?
That was mine. It was, I told you about the, when I was up in Dunedin, it was during Christmas, and each, like, people sponsored a light pole and they decorated with like decorations. It goes in that artistic kind of thing. where they were allowed to be able to decorate it, and some had, it was just a
That is
neat
cool.
thing, and it was,
But if
It
we're
was-
gonna talk about that.
yeah, it was
it's-
on here to come, to put
We're
on
in
the future
August.
MFP. Well, maybe it needs to go on.
It needs to go on
in
sooner
October,
than later.
yeah.
October, you got it.
I just think it'd be a fun way for
Yeah.
people, and by the October, maybe we'll start to see some light poles actually. go.
Well, at least they're laying on the ground decorating the yard. Yeah. They're here. You want them up too?
I think with that, we're gonna
Got
need
'em
to,
here.
we're gonna need to check with FPL on that too, because technically we don't have our own poles yet, so this could be a mute.
Oh, yeah.
So if we want our polls sooner, can we just grab them and put them in the ground?
Start walking them down.
That's a quick, that'd
Let's
be a
let
quick
them
way
get-
to
Good luck
get,
with that.
to get them to respond to you to get them put up.
Yeah.
And we could decorate the pole at the same time?
Do the light poles have an outlet? So
I don't know that they do, but I gotta believe that there's something that could be added if they need to be down the road. I don't know, but
There's always solar
it's a
lights.
town-owned system, so it's,
Solar lights,
once it's
batteries.
installed.
Solar
Yeah.
lights, batteries, we got it covered.
There's all kinds of things. I mean,
I will say the
we happen to know the
flags.
Queen of Blinky, we could
Yeah.
probably.
Really, exactly. I will say the flags that went up along Old San Carlos and everything for the 4th of July and all those, that was really cool. Really, really cool. I love those.
Mr. Merrill?
I have
Oh,
nothing
were you done?
additional.
I'm
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm done.
Nothing additional.
I don't have anything additional, but this has been on the agenda since last November. It looks like joint sessions between council and advisory committees, other than the LPA and the Public Safety Committee. We haven't met with any of the other committees that I recall. Is this something that's still an issue, or just keep it on there in case it is? Or
Actually, I will say that in BORCAD specifically, and because I'm the liaison with BORCAD, there was a, oh God, what was he doing? There was a time when we had approved an entire administrative building and all that kind of thing, and then Ian came in place, and the people who have sat on BORCAD for a long time, they worked very, very hard for that approval for that building. And now we sit with no building in sight, no pool, and it comes up every time. And Jeff will agree with me that this is something that, as much as we say it, I think it would be really helpful at our next board CAB meeting if at least Andy or Frankie, one of the two of you could be there to address some of their ongoing questions, because I mean, it's even come up to the fact from one of the people, is BORCAB even, should we even have a BORCAB anymore? What are we doing? What role are we playing? So, and I just keep trying to tell them that this is timing. We have to wait for a couple of things to happen, which some things did now, and with the new town offices being official and that type of thing. So I just think it'd be really helpful if you could come in and talk with them.
I'd be more than happy to come and at least explain how we got to where we're at with, especially with the CDBGR.
Yeah.
And then also Plan D, E, and F that we have lined up for those projects as well.
That would be great. And I think if I'm right, our next BORCAD meeting is the 21st of August.
Oh, I can't.
Yeah, that's a date. That's not a good date.
I'm rearranging my soccer.
With regards to that, do you think it would be prudent to meet with the LPA again while we're going over the LDC?
so did this board cap thing get addressed fully, or?
That's it. I'm sorry.
I know we've had,
You're good.
Just while we're waiting for his mic to
Just go
come.
ahead. I do know that the two that I, am on, CellCab and BORCAB, have been wanting some direction from council and the town as to the direction that they want to go in, or that they want us to. Okay, cool. The direction that the town is looking for them, like you said, Karen, they're just not really sure where we're going with it. Things like the pool aren't moving very fast. We're just kind of waiting on some funding, and that's just kind of the way it is right now. I mean, we're in recovery mode still. There's things that are happening slowly, but they're just kind of sitting, waiting for something to happen.
Well, we're gonna be off this, these buildings are gonna be gone in the near future. I mean, so this will be opening back up. Is now a good time to to task them with trying to find funding or grant or something. We've got the design ready building. It's already pretty much ready to go to permit. Does it make sense to take a look at that again? Does it make sense to find a way to fund it, to build it?
If
Or
that's,
doesn't it?
if,
Or
I mean, if
downsize
that's
it, or-
the direction of the town and that's the way we want to go, yeah, we can definitely discuss what that looks like, but
You know,
I don't
There's a
know.
lot of
I don't know if
animosity
that's
of-
their,
They didn't have a lot of input into the building.
right. That building itself, what we had envisioned and told to dream about, because that's when I still sat on board cab. And then what came out was like, what building is this? We had no idea. So
yeah, the ones that are on it weren't exactly thrilled with how it
yeah,
turned out.
no one was.
Um,
No one was.
So
But then
yeah,
I keep looking at like the new town offices and all the extra space that's going to be there and opening up to different groups and different 501c3s for meetings and all that kind of thing. And so then it's like, is it really an administrative building that we need? Or maybe we need to switch gears and look at other types of recreational type
True.
things that go more with Borcap
My-
or Bay Oaks.
Personally, my hope would be, because the Bay Oaks facility is aging and it's going to eventually be switched over to Public Works. Whatever the new building is, can incorporate some of the previous functions, but also some exercise facilities that
Exactly.
are up to date and current and trend with where the island is headed. Yeah.
And that makes more sense for a recreational facility as opposed to, you know, the meeting rooms and theater and that kind of thing.
Especially with the library right over there.
Right, exactly.
yeah, and
So-
I guess in my perspective, we just put $1 million and some into Bay Oaks and it got renovated. I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. It's actually in good shape. Really, we redid the roof, we did all the flooring, fresh coat of paint. The floor is still really good. So it's just whatever the town and the council want as priorities, I guess.
Well, but I mean, there's things
yeah.
you can look at, like indoor pickleball space and,
Right.
things
Oh
that,
yeah,
that
absolutely.
you don't
Yeah.
have to have co-mingling in
Yeah.
one building.
No, you can
Instead of having a
revamp
big
it.
administrative building that was there before, and
Right.
now the ball field's going to be in the back, and
Mhm.
now you've got more space to create
Yep.
park and green
Mhm.
space and things like that.
And that's what during that visioning session we did at Diamond Head. That was one of the things they wanted, more walking paths and bike paths and green space like that that they
As
can
opposed to a building
use.
that-
Yeah, and I could go either way on it. Like it'd be cool to have a new building, but it'd also have great to have green space where you can come out and kick a soccer ball around and run around as a kid, or adults, I guess, too. Have,
Maybe does it make sense to maybe take what the layout's going to be when the new other field is done and this is gone, and here's the usable space that we have, because we still have that interlocal agreement don't we still have to do a park for the school?
For
Wasn't
the
that?
school
to
and
redo
fencing,
that?
there's a certain place that the fence needs to go and that type of thing too. That was all in the old.
yeah, we did get a
interlocal.
playground for them. That's on their lot, and I thought the fencing was already done with the boundaries, but I'm not
My
sure.
point is, if
I know.
you get the usable space,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then I mean,
Well, now the new town
now you got a
hall,
whole.
the new town hall has a community room that's about this size. That's what it's going to be used for. Councilor Woodson just mentioned that. So, I mean, you don't need that space now.
Right.
We've taken that off that list. So now reevaluate the building.
Then
What
maybe
space?
to your point, these are all things that their Bay Oaks Borcap could be talking about.
Mhm.
Yep. Does it make sense to get, or instead of now we're not building that, can we do a structure to put all these assets that we have now to protect out of the sun as opposed to sitting in an outside parking lot? Does that make sense to put that facility somewhere on campus here? You know what I mean? It's just-
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like I keep telling everyone, even in WorkCab, we have a clean slate kind of on some of this stuff. We have a lot of,
and I mean, you could have food truck things in here. You get all kinds of things you could do that you do everywhere else. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
And I love the proposal before had a lot of social opportunities for the island to gather as a community. But I think one of the things that's changed as well with the weight room, the exercise/weight room private facility gone now from the island. We're no longer competing against any of our local businesses. And obviously the weight room at Bay Oaks, even though they did a nice job of doing the best they can in a pretty small space,
Could be huge.
that could be expanded in a way that can really help public health on the island, I think. But particularly now that there's not a private facility on the island.
I think we just gave them a lot to talk about.
Sure did.
I know.
yeah.
I hear it.
And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that through CellCab and Mound House, we're doing the museum accreditation program. And that is going to be on, I talked to Andy about presenting it to you all, but it's going to be a joint session with council as part of it. And then once we get that MAPS program, that opens up a lot of funding and marketing and everything for us. So it'll be coming up. Just want to say that with the joint.
I guess, Jeff, if the committee still feel after meeting that they need to speak with us, then go ahead and bring the representative here to a council meeting and we can work on it.
Okay. Yep. I will relay that message.
Thank you.
Is that cell cab joint meeting required as part of the certification, or is that just a courtesy?
I think it's required as a quorum. I don't think everyone has to be there, but I think we have to have a majority.
But the cell cab has to brief, the council has to be part of that certification process?
Yes, that's one of the requirements.
All right, very good. Well, I would take that opportunity to have that joint meeting at the same
Sure,
time. you know,
absolutely.
If we're going to have one.
Okay, I forget that was.
That was me.
Okay, where did we leave off?
Well, I rudely interrupted. I was asking about,
So rudely interrupted.
I think daddy daycare is an option too over here.
Daddy daycare.
Daddy daycare. Drop
Oh,
your husband off.
Mm.
I was asking about the LPA, perhaps because we're going through the LDC and the comp plan's coming up. Maybe they should probably request it, but I don't think it'd be a bad idea to get everybody on the same page.
I was thinking that it might make sense to do a joint session once we have
The
the,
data.
once
Yeah.
we've had the meeting with the general public,
That's
you know,
perfect.
both the meetings, and then we can come back to meet with you guys as a group.
Sounds good.
That'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you.
John, was it realize, is that anything else?
That took care of what I was concerned about.
I have something further.
Okay. So do I.
If you're
Go
done,
ahead.
excuse me.
I'll wait.
The
Okay.
joint session that Jeff was talking about with CellCab for the MAPS assessment, Adam Knight is requesting that on September 19th. That's when the MAPS people will be here. I don't know who they are.
That'd be a night,
Meeting.
that's second.
No.
meeting.
19.
No, September 19th.
September 19th
That's
is
not- no.
Thursday.
That's not a
Oh.
budget.
Council meeting.
Yeah.
Correct. I guess they will be here at a certain time.
That's
so-
a totally separate meeting.
Yep, the visit dates of the MAPS person, whoever that is, they'll be here September 18th and 19th.
Tracking.
So he's asking if they could schedule a special joint council CellCab meeting on September 19th. And then while you're all looking at your calendars, just a reminder, next meeting on August 19th will be at Bay Oaks, not here because of the primary elections and the supervisor elections being here in Chambers.
Yes, big. Is that it? Or are you waiting for us to say, is the 19th
On the
okay?
19th.
The 19th is the council meeting?
Yes.
No, the
They wanna
19th
have
would
a
be the
Joint.
joint with CellCab for their
September
MAPS
19th.
assessment.
Oh,
September 19th, I'm sorry, yes,
Oh.
September.
'Cause
What time? No idea.
9? I mean, what-
Um,
How about you let us know at the next meeting
I will let you know in just a moment here.
or in a few minutes?
9 to 11 they're asking for.
during the day.
Yes.
I thought somebody said even had to be an evening. Sorry.
No, you have to clarify it.
I thought somebody said it had to be. an
Does
evening.
anybody have any issues with that?
September, yeah,
19th?
September.
So that would be CellCab joint meeting, right? 9 to 11.
So his
I'm good.
agenda has September 17th, 18th, but his email ask has 18th, 19th. So
Clarify.
how about we bring this back to you at the next meeting?
I've already put it in ink, Amy.
Sorry.
I'll discard my changes because the 18th would actually be better.
Well, just, yeah, get it figured out and then just let us know at the next meeting. And it
We
sounds like
will.
everybody's flexible.
Yes.
Anything else, Ian?
No, not as flexible as it
No,
used to be.
I just have two things. If there's someone else that's okay with adding it for discussion, because I don't see it on here, but I know we talked about it. One is the Estero Boulevard landscaping, how we want to approach that as far as allowing people to be artistic and creative and, how we, that's not on here. So I'd like to see that. But if There's at least one other person that's.
I would like to talk about that. Yes.
So if we can add that to the agenda management. And then the other thing is, been talking, I don't even know if it's a feasible thing, Chad's not here, but I know I've been talking with Andy a little bit about looking at a potential for Moby mats or something that we could put on the beach that would allow both walkers, bikers. I've seen it in some other areas where they've got wide ones and it actually have markings of the bike on one side and the walkers on the other. If that's a feasible thing to be able to do or not do, not that I want to give staff more work into looking into stuff, but
I did talk to FDEP about certain issues of that. They seem to think that would be still a concern as a walkway would be, and then FWC might have some issues regarding turtles. But
yeah, I figured that was probably gonna.
But what, you said these are mites.
Mites.
I think we should explore it.
yeah, I'm just saying,
We're
Well, I
looking
think it's
into.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with
Just want to
that.
add that on there
Sure.
for discussion to add a future MMP meeting.
And that would most likely, Mayor, as I envision it, tell me if you agree, would potentially start at maybe Red Coconut and go to Times Square, not necessarily the whole.
No, I think that to your point, I think it makes sense where there's no bike lane
Yeah.
to be able to maybe do something, see how it works.
Yeah.
And it's something that can be removed fairly quickly. Should the event of a storm or.
Less residential property would be impacted. And I
Right.
would think the resorts, if they're renters or their guests could hop on a bike and get to Times Square in 5 minutes versus.
Well, I think of everything, wheelchairs, people in wheelchairs, if they want to pull up to a beach access and they can only go out so far, it'd be nice if they could get out.
And if it's,
Yeah,
if you
traverse.
got two directions going, then the electric bikes wouldn't threaten anybody either. Because if walkers are generally going to walk along the beach.
Right. So it's just an idea to kick around and see if it goes anywhere. Is there anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by John, seconded by Counselor Safford.